The early autumn air slipped in through the glass windows of Seoul University, brushing against some of Park Yin's desk. In the middle of the lecture hall filled with the scent of expensive perfume and conversations about plans for luxurious weekend getaways, Yin sat quietly, immersed in her worn brown-covered notebook. The simple white shirt and cream-colored knitted cardigan she wore might not have radiated the same luxury as her classmates' clothes, but their cleanliness and the soft scent of lavender lingering from her body always managed to make anyone feel comfortable around her. She didn't need branded stuff. To Yin, being at this elite university on a full scholarship was already more than enough to be grateful for. Yin, your answer to that startup case study was seriously beyond expectations. Professor Lee's voice broke through the hum of the students' conversations. The middle-aged man smiled warmly as he straightened the stack of papers on the podium. Your risk analysis was really sharp and realistic. Great job. Yin looked up, giving him a small, polite smile. Thanks, Professor. I was just trying to look at the market fluctuation trends from last quarter. From one of the middle rows, a quiet but noticeable scoff could be heard. Mona crossed her long legs, covered in the latest designer shoes, staring at Yin's back with a look in her eyes that was hard to read. Her seatmate whispered softly, "She's seriously smart though. But does she seriously not have anything else in her closet besides that plain shirt?" "Just leave her alone," Mona muttered, her voice sounding cold even as she flashed a fake smile when a few male students secretly glanced at Yin in admiration. Poor people like her can only rely on their brains because they don't have anything else to brag about. Besides, professors always have a soft spot for scholarship students with sad stories. Even though Mona tried to keep her voice down, Yin, whose hearing was pretty sharp, could only let out a long, silent sigh. She was already used to the condescending looks from that girl. Mona had never dared to bully her physically or openly, and Yin knew exactly why. Yin's reputation among the faculty and her classmates was simply too spotless. She was basically the definition of a model student. Bullying Yin would only ruin Mona's own popular image. Professor Lee cleared his throat, demanding the class's attention again. All right, for the big final project, I'm not gonna let you guys pick your own groups. I've already made the list. The project is about strategic planning for a business acquisition, and you'll be paired up starting today until the project is done. The room immediately erupted with protests, complaints, and hopeful whispers, but Professor Lee ignored them and started reading out the names. Yin twirled her pen between her fingers, waiting patiently. Whomever her partner was, she was already prepared to do most of the work herself if she had to. Students here were often way too busy partying to actually care about their grades. And for the next group, Park Yin. Professor Lee paused for a moment, adjusting his glasses as he looked down at the list in his hand. You'll be paired with Jungkook. Silence. For a few seconds, it felt like all the oxygen in the room had been sucked away without a trace. Almost every head, including Mona's, which was now stiff with tension in her seat, turned simultaneously toward the back corner of the room. There, leaning back with an utterly untouchable aura surrounding him, sat Jungkook. The young man stared straight ahead with the same blank expression that always rested on his handsome face. There was no sign of annoyance, nor was there any excitement. He simply stayed silent, his sharp eyes seeming to freeze the air around him. Yin swallowed, feeling her palms grow slightly sweaty. Out of everyone in this class, why did it have to be Jungkook? He wasn't just popular. He was the center of gravity on this campus. Extremely smart, born into a prestigious conglomerate family, and ridiculously handsome. Yet his reputation for rejecting dozens of beautiful girls with an icy attitude made Yin wonder if they could actually work together without things getting awkward. After class ended and most of the students rushed out, Yin gathered the courage to approach Jungkook's desk before he could leave. Her heart was beating a little faster, not because she was captivated by him at all, but because she was nervous about the cold reaction she might get. "Hey, Jungkook," Yin greeted softly, keeping her distance so she wouldn't come off as too pushy. Jungkook, who was putting his books into his bag, stopped what he was doing. He lifted his face, staring straight into Yin's eyes. His pitch-black eyes pierced through Yin's defenses, making her almost take a step back. "Yeah," Jungkook's voice sounded deep, low, and calm as it broke through the silence of the nearly empty classroom. "About Professor Lee's project. When are you free to talk about it? I know you're probably really busy with your own stuff, so I can work around your schedule. If you want me to put together the first draft of the outline so you can just look it over, I don't mind." Yin spoke quickly and straight to the point, trying to be as efficient as possible so she wouldn't waste the time of someone who was known for hating being bothered. Jungkook stayed silent for a moment, his eyes never leaving Yin's face, studying her features as if he was looking for something. Then slowly, his brows furrowed slightly. Why do you have to do the outline yourself? This is a group project, not an individual one. Oh, Yin blinked, a little surprised that he hadn't brushed her off. I just figured you might prefer things to be practical. A lot of people on this campus would rather just have everything done for them. I'm not a lot of people, Jungkook cut in. Strangely, there was no harsh or arrogant tone in his voice. If anything, he sounded gentle. We can start tomorrow, 3 in the afternoon, at the main library. Are you busy around that time? No, I'm free. Yeah, of course I can. Yin nodded quickly, letting out a relieved sigh inside. Good. Jungkook slung his bag over one broad shoulder. Before walking away past the rows of seats, he turned back to look at Yin. And Yin? Yeah? You don't have to act like you're my subordinate or my assistant. We're teammates. We're equals. Yin stood frozen, staring at his broad back as he disappeared through the classroom door, letting the string of words Jungkook had just said sink in. In another corner near the exit, without Yin noticing, Mona's knuckles had turned white as she tightly gripped the strap of her Chanel bag, her eyes filled with such intense dislike that it felt like they could burn a hole through Yin's back right then and there. The next day, Yin arrived at the library 15 minutes earlier than their agreed time. She spread several thick reference books across the table and turned on her laptop, ready to take over most of the work if Jungkook showed up just to get his part over with. Exactly at 3, a cup of coffee was placed on her desk, filling the air with a sweet and comforting caramel aroma. Yin looked up, finding Jungkook pulling out the chair across from her. Coffee? Is this for me? She asked hesitantly, looking back and forth between the paper cup and Jungkook's face. Caramel macchiato, obviously it's for you. It's not like it's for the demon sitting next to you, right? Jungkook said casually, making Yin instinctively turn toward the empty chair beside her with a horrified look. Seeing that, the corner of Jungkook's lips twitched slightly as he opened his bag and took out his laptop. I saw you order that when I was waiting in line at the campus cafe last week. I heard sugar can help your brain work better when you're working on business strategies. Yin stared at the cup, then looked at Jungkook with her eyes slightly widened. You noticed what I ordered last week? Jungkook stopped moving his fingers over the keyboard, as if he had only just realized what he had unconsciously admitted. The tips of his ears turned slightly red, but he kept his expression as calm as possible. I just happened to be standing right behind you, and yeah, my hearing still works pretty well. Drink it before it gets cold. Thanks, Yin said softly, taking a sip of the coffee. The sweet warmth flowing down her throat somehow seemed to spread slowly through her body too, warming the inside of her chest. Their discussion that afternoon went much more smoothly and dynamically than Yin had expected. Jungkook was nothing like a passive or arrogant teammate. He had a sharp, highly critical mind, but he always gave her room to speak and listen carefully whenever Yin shared her thoughts. What if we go with a vertical integration strategy? Jungkook suggested, pointing at Yin's laptop screen as he leaned forward. This target company has a monopoly on raw materials. If we acquire its distribution channel, we can cut its profit margin down drastically. That's actually brilliant. Yin's eyes lit up with excitement as she unconsciously leaned forward too. But we also need to be extra careful with antitrust regulations. If we get careless and cross that line, the fine from the government regulator could end up costing as much as the acquisition itself. Jungkook rested his chin on the back of his hand, tilting his head slightly as he looked at Yin's excited face. You're right, I totally missed the legal risk part. You're really thorough, Yin. The simple but sincere compliment made Yin snap back to reality, suddenly realizing just how close their faces were right now. She could smell the masculine musk of Jungkook's cologne mixed with the scent of old book pages in the library. Yin quickly leaned back against her chair, clearing her throat awkwardly as she tried to calm the sudden nervousness that had washed over her. Sorry, I think I got a little too excited, Yin mumbled, fixing the loose strands of hair that had fallen across her forehead. Jungkook smiled faintly, a small, hidden smile that was so rare it was almost impossible to notice if Yin hadn't been paying such close attention. You don't have to apologize. I like seeing you get excited when you talk about this. It's different from that tense look you always have in class. I'm not tense, Yin argued defensively, trying to focus her eyes back on the rows of numbers on the screen. You're always gripping your pen like it's your only life raft in the ocean, Yin. Jungkook folded his arms on the table, glancing at the watch on his wrist. You know, it's almost 7. We've been staring at these financial reports for more than 3 hours. Come on, let's get dinner. Yin froze. Dinner? With Jeon Jungkook? Outside of their project schedule? I think we can keep going tomorrow, Jungkook. I can just eat at the dorm cafeteria. It's cheap. You're turning me down? Jungkook raised an eyebrow. There was no arrogance in his tone, but rather an unexpected glint of amusement. That's not what I mean. It's just, people are gonna talk if they see us. You know what your reputation is like on this campus, and I really don't want to draw anyone's attention. Yin lowered her head, nervously playing with the edge of her cardigan. Jungkook let out a soft sigh. His hand reached across the table, and his fingertips gently brushed the back of Yin's hand, making the girl flinch slightly as she held her breath. I seriously don't care about what people think, Yin. And you shouldn't have to care either. I'm hungry. You're hungry. And I really hate eating alone. Come with me, okay? Jungkook's voice suddenly softened, almost sounding like a sincere plea, slowly melting away all of Yin's defenses. The girl stared at their fingers touching for a moment before slowly nodding. Alright, but there's one condition. We eat at a regular little place near the south gate, not some fancy restaurant. Jungkook chuckled softly this time. The sound of his laughter was clear and warm, sending a gentle tremor through Yin's heart. Anywhere you want. The night air in Seoul was starting to feel chilly as they walked side by side toward a small soup noodle shop on the outskirts of the campus area. Steam rose from the large pots in front of the shop, spreading the mouth-watering aroma of beef bone broth. Yin stepped inside a little hesitantly, glancing toward Jungkook, who looked far too perfect in his expensive black wool coat to be sitting somewhere this simple. When they sat down on the plastic stools, Jungkook casually grabbed some tissues and wiped the table in front of Yin without being asked. He ordered 2 bowls of spicy soup noodles from the shop owner, ignoring the curious looks from several other students who noticed him in such an inexpensive place. When their orders arrived, Jungkook looked at Yin, who still seemed a little awkward. In the middle of her meal, a strand of Yin's bangs kept falling over her eyes because her hair tie was starting to loosen. When Yin was about to move it away with her left hand, Jungkook's hand moved across the table faster. The young man's long fingers tucked the loose strand of hair behind Yin's ear. His movement was so natural and gentle that Yin's entire body instantly froze. You're gonna choke if you keep eating while getting distracted like that, Jungkook muttered casually, looking into Yin's eyes for a moment before going back to sipping his noodle broth, as if he hadn't just made Yin's heart race like crazy. Yeah, thanks, Yin replied hoarsely, lowering her face deeply to hide the bright blush spreading across her cheeks. That night, without either of them realizing it, a new kind of intimacy began to grow between the clinking of spoons and their quiet laughter. However, from across the street behind the brightly lit glass window of a coffee shop, a pair of eyes stared sharply toward the noodle shop. Mona stood frozen, her breathing quick and ragged as she held back the anger exploding inside her chest. Her eyes clearly captured how Jungkook, the ice prince who had ignored her for an entire year, had just touched Yin's hair with such a warm look in his eyes. Mona's jaw tightened, her nails digging hard into her own palms. Blind jealousy and hatred began to blend together, poisoning every corner of her mind and fueling a dark plan that would make sure the calm smile on Yin's face was shattered into pieces as soon as possible. A week had passed since that night at the noodle shop, and the atmosphere inside the classroom felt increasingly suffocating for Mona. Every time she looked over, the same sight always burned her eyes. Jungkook, the ice prince who had never been willing to look at any girl for more than 3 seconds, was now casually leaning toward Yin's desk. The young man laughed softly, a rare and precious baritone sound, in response to something Yin had just whispered from behind her notebook. Their closeness was no longer just that of group project partners. There was an unspoken intimacy in the way Jungkook looked at the simple girl, as if Yin were the only person on the entire campus worth paying attention to. Mona's hatred had reached its peak. If Jungkook couldn't see how beneath him Yin was, then Mona herself would force the young man to open his eyes. The opportunity came during the break before Professor Kang's class began. Most of the students were outside, while Yin had gone to the restroom, leaving her slightly open canvas tote bag on her chair. Jungkook had also just gotten up to answer a phone call in the hallway, leaving his jacket and belongings scattered across his desk. With quick steps and her heart pounding, Mona slipped past Jungkook's desk. Her hand, adorned with neatly polished nails, snatched the young man's black leather wallet. Within seconds, she slipped the wallet into Yin's canvas bag, hiding it between the stacks of thick books. Mona returned to her seat, wearing a crooked smile as she smoothed out the folds of her skirt, waiting for the time bomb to go off. 10 minutes later, the classroom was full again. Professor Kang hadn't arrived yet. Jungkook, who had just returned to his seat, reached into his jacket pocket before rummaging through his bag with a furrowed brow. His unusual movements immediately caught the attention of several people around him. "What's wrong, Jungkook?" one of the male students in the front row asked. "My wallet," Jungkook's voice was calm but loud enough to stop the conversations across half the room. I left it on my desk earlier, and now it's gone. The room immediately buzzed. This elite class, filled with the children of politicians and conglomerate families, had never known the word theft. Losing a luxury item was a huge scandal. Missing? Mona broke the silence in a loud voice, deliberately standing from her seat so everyone's eyes would turn toward her. Her face was covered with a fake look of shock. You sure, Jungkook? There's no way something that big could just disappear. Someone must have taken it while you were out. Maybe you just misplaced it, Mona. Don't start accusing people right away, another female student muttered, but the atmosphere was already tense. How could he have just misplaced it? We all know Jungkook's wallet definitely isn't cheap, not to mention what's inside it. There has to be a thief in this class. Mona folded her arms across her chest, her eyes scanning the entire room before finally stopping and locking onto Yin, who sat frozen in her seat. And honestly, it's not hard to guess who did it. We just need to figure out who's the most desperate and actually needs money in this room. Yin looked up, her eyes widening in disbelief as she realized where Mona's gaze and that invisible accusing finger were pointed. What are you trying to say, Mona? Yin's voice trembled slightly, not because she was scared, but because she was completely shocked by such a blatant accusation. Mona gave a mocking smile, stepping closer to Yin's row of desks. Don't play dumb, Park Yin. Everyone here could buy Jungkook's wallet 10 times over without even blinking. You're the only scholarship student here. You're the only one who wears the same cheap clothes every day. Who else would have the strongest motive to steal if not you? Watch your mouth, Mona. Yin shot to her feet, both hands clenched tightly at her sides. Her beautiful face flushed with anger and humiliation. You can hate me, you can make fun of the way I dress, but don't you ever accuse me of something I didn't do. I would never steal Jungkook's wallet, especially when he's my project partner. Oh, you totally would. Mona cut her off quickly, her voice shrilling throughout the room, not giving Yin a chance to breathe. You're just using the whole project partner thing as an excuse, aren't you? You're such a hypocrite, Yin. You act all innocent, get close to Jungkook, try to show off how smart you are in front of him, when really, you're just taking advantage of the situation. You're using how close you two have gotten so you can steal his expensive stuff behind his back without anyone suspecting you. Enough. The single word was spoken in a flat, low, and ice-cold tone, yet it instantly made the entire class freeze. Jungkook stepped forward, walking past the desks until he stood right beside Yin. The intimidating aura radiating from him was so intense that several students lowered their heads. Jungkook's sharp eyes stared at Mona as if she were the most disgusting creature he had ever seen. Shut up, Mona. Don't you dare accuse Yin of something like that without any proof. Jungkook hissed, his voice sharp as a blade. His hand moved protectively, slightly shielding Yin's body from the judgmental stares of the entire class. Seeing Jungkook openly becoming Yin's shield, Mona's sanity instantly began to crumble. The jealousy she had been suppressing for so long exploded out of control. Why are you defending her, Jungkook? Mona screamed, her eyes brimming with anger and frustration that had reached their breaking point. Why do you have to turn a blind eye just for this low-class girl? I've always been there for you. Girls who are just as worthy as you have always tried to get your attention, and you threw all of us away. You rejected us just to defend this poor thief who tricked you. Yin's breathing grew rapid. Tears of humiliation began to pool in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her dignity felt like it was being trampled and stripped bare in front of everyone simply because she hadn't been born rich. She couldn't let Mona keep dancing on top of her pain. You want proof? Yin gently pulled at Jungkook's arm as he tried to hold her back, then stared at Mona with a defiant look in her eyes. Her hand grabbed her canvas bag and slammed it onto the desk, making a loud thud. Check my bag. Check it right now in front of everyone, Mona. If you're so sure I'm the thief, then go ahead and look. Maybe then that poisonous mouth of yours will finally shut up and stop accusing me. A victorious smile immediately spread across Mona's lips. This was exactly what she had been waiting for. Without hesitating for even a second, Mona lunged forward. She roughly grabbed Yin's bag and dumped its contents onto the desk. Books, a pencil case, small notes, and a water bottle spilled out. And right among the pile of books, a black leather wallet bearing a famous designer logo slipped out, landing with a heavy thud that echoed through the tense silence of the classroom. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Several female students covered their mouths with their hands, utterly shocked. Yin froze, all the color draining from her face. Her heart seemed to stop beating for several seconds as she stared at Jungkook's wallet lying among her belongings. No, Yin whispered hoarsely, shaking her head in panic. She looked at Jungkook with pleading eyes. "Jungkook, I swear, it wasn't me. I don't know how that thing got in there." "I knew it," Mona exclaimed excitedly, her voice filled with triumphant venom. She immediately grabbed the black wallet, holding it high in the air as if it were a championship trophy. "Look everyone, this is solid proof of Park Yin's hypocrisy. The professor's beloved scholarship girl is actually nothing but a filthy, greedy thief." However, because of Mona's overly rough and excited movement, the thick leather wallet slipped from her grip. It hit the corner of the desk, flew open in midair, and then fell to the floor. As the wallet hit the floor, something slipped out of its main compartment. A neatly folded piece of paper opened up, revealing a Polaroid photo that landed face up. The classroom fell silent again, this time even heavier than before. Mona, who had intended to pick up the wallet, froze, her eyes fixed on the photo now lying clearly beneath the tip of her shoe. It was a photo of Yin, a portrait of Yin genuinely smiling while holding a cup of coffee in the library, secretly taken from an angle that clearly showed the photographer's admiration. Mona's face went pale instantly. Her mouth opened and closed without making a sound. Her victory was brutally snatched away, replaced by shock that hit her right in the gut. Yin herself stood frozen, staring at the photo of herself on the floor as confusion slowly crept into her mind. Jungkook slowly stepped forward, breaking through the suffocating silence. He bent down, picking up the wallet and the Polaroid photo with an eerily calm movement. He brushed the dust off Yin's photo with his thumb, then looked at the crowd, his gaze stopping on Mona's pale face. "I already told you to shut up, Mona," Jungkook said, his voice no longer raised, but low and deadly. "I know Yin really well, and I know for a fact that Yin would never steal my wallet. If my wallet was found in her bag, then someone put it there on purpose to set her up, to frame her." Mona trembled. The shame, fear, and jealousy tearing through her heart made her feel like she was losing her mind. Her trembling hand pointed toward the photo Jungkook was holding. "That photo. Why? Why is there a photo of that low-class girl in your wallet, Jungkook? You couldn't possibly. Do you? Do you like her?" Jungkook didn't even blink. He turned toward Yin, looking into the eyes of the girl who was still trembling with fear, before looking straight back at Mona. With his jaw tightening and his voice ringing firmly through every corner of the room, Jungkook answered with complete ease. "Yeah, I do like her. If I didn't, why would I keep a photo of the girl I love in my wallet? Obviously, it's because I love her." The blunt and completely unwavering confession that came from Jungkook's lips hit the classroom like a thunderclap on a clear day. Everyone gasped, some holding their breath until their faces turned red. Mona stood frozen like a block of ice, the hatred that had been flashing in her eyes fading away, replaced by a blank, stunned, disbelieving stare. Her mouth hung slightly open, but not a single syllable could escape her suddenly dry throat. You're lying, right?" Mona finally whispered, her voice trembling badly, sounding pitiful in the silence. "You're only saying that to save her from being humiliated, right, Jungkook? There's no way you actually like this country girl." Jungkook stared at Mona with a gaze as cold as an iceberg in the Arctic. There wasn't even a hint of sympathy in his eyes. "I don't waste my time lying, especially not to someone like you, Mona," he hissed sharply. The young man turned around, his back now facing Mona, who had begun trembling from the overwhelming emotions and unbearable humiliation. Jungkook's sharp, piercing gaze instantly softened when his eyes found Yin's tear-filled ones again. Yin stared at him with trembling lips, her mind still trying to process the string of unbelievable events that had hit her one after another today. She had been accused of stealing, humiliated in front of everyone, and now, she had just been declared the girl Jungkook loved. Without caring about the dozens of eyes watching his every move, Jungkook stepped forward. His large, warm hand reached out, gently wrapping around Yin's wrist, the tenderness completely contrasting with the anger he had shown just seconds ago. "We're leaving," Jungkook said quietly, but his tone carried an absolute command that left no room for argument. "But, Jungkook, your wallet, my bag," Yin stammered, still trying to process everything that had just happened. "Leave it all. We've got something way more important to deal with," Jungkook cut in firmly. He gently pulled Yin along, guiding her through the crowd of students who immediately stepped aside, clearing a path for them as if they were afraid of being struck by the intimidating aura of the campus prince. It turned out Jungkook had brought Yin to the disciplinary office. He explained to Mr. Han what had happened in class and asked for permission to view the classroom's CCTV footage. The monitor finally proved everything, clearly showing the footage of Mona sneaking the wallet into Yin's bag. Mona was immediately called into the room and confronted with the evidence, where she burst into hysterical tears, claiming it was just a joke because she was jealous of how Jungkook always ignored her. Of course, Jungkook dismissed the excuse with disgust, which was immediately followed by Mr. Han's anger as he handed Mona a 3-month suspension, with a warning that she would be permanently expelled if she ever made the same mistake again. 1 hour later, Yin and Jungkook were already in the quiet back garden of the campus. Yin sat on one of the wooden benches, still silent as she processed the remnants of adrenaline that were slowly fading away. Jungkook stood in front of her, looking at the girl with an expression that was difficult to read. "Thank you." Yin's voice broke the silence, so soft it was almost carried away by the wind. The girl looked up, finally letting the tears she had been holding back flow freely down her cheeks. Her defenses completely crumbled. "Thank you, Jungkook. If you hadn't taken me to Mr. Han's office, I might have lost my scholarship. I might have had to drop out." Jungkook let out a long sigh before sitting down beside Yin, close enough to her. His large hand reached out, wiping the tears from Yin's cheek with his rough yet incredibly gentle thumb. "Please stop crying. Seeing you cry hurts way more than watching my financial reports tank," Jungkook said, trying to slip in a joking tone even though his voice sounded hoarse with emotion. Yin smiled faintly between her sobs, responding to Jungkook's touch by slightly turning her face into his palm. "Why did you defend me? Back in class, even before you saw the CCTV footage, you were already defending me and openly standing up to Mona. Why did you trust me that much?" Jungkook looked straight into Yin's tear-filled eyes, getting lost in their depths. "Because I trust you, Yin. It's that simple. Your eyes can never lie. And also..." Jungkook fell silent for a moment, swallowing, before continuing in a much lower and more intimate tone. "Do you remember what I said in class earlier?" Yin's breath caught. Of course she remembered. Those words had been echoing endlessly in her head. "About the photo in your wallet?" "About the fact that I like you," Jungkook corrected quickly. He reached for both of Yin's hands, holding them tightly in his lap. "I never say things just to show off. I'm serious, Yin. I've liked you for quite a while. You're strong, you're smart, and you're the most genuine thing on this campus full of fake people." Yin fell silent, her heart pumping blood at an almost insane speed. She had never imagined that the campus prince, Jeon Jungkook, would confess his love to her, pouring out his feelings with such beautiful vulnerability. "Jungkook, I'm just a regular student. I don't have anything to brag about except my brains. We come from completely different worlds," Yin whispered hesitantly, suddenly troubled again by the difference in their social status. "Screw the world," Jungkook cut in firmly, his gaze sharpening. "I don't need a girl who has everything. I just need you." All this time, I could hold back my feelings because we weren't close before, but after spending all this time together lately, studying and eating together, it's getting harder and harder to hide how I feel, Yin. Be my girlfriend, okay? Yin's tears fell again, but this time they were tears of happiness. She looked into Jungkook's eyes, searching for even the slightest hint of doubt, but all she found was burning sincerity. With a wide smile that made her face glow, Yin slowly nodded. "Yeah, Jungkook, I will." A rare smile finally appeared on Jungkook's lips, transforming his usually blank face into something breathtaking. He pulled Yin into his arms, holding her possessively as if he never wanted to let her go again. Yin returned the embrace, burying her face against Jungkook's broad chest and breathing in the masculine scent that now felt like home to her.